Millions of years ago, long before cities, roads, kingdoms, and written history, the world was a dangerous and unpredictable place. Every day was a fight for survival. Early humans lived surrounded by vast forests, open grasslands, towering mountains, and dark caves. Deadly predators moved silently through the wilderness. Food was difficult to find, water could disappear during long droughts, and one powerful storm could destroy everything. But sometimes the most dangerous threat did not come from a hungry predator. It did not come from a violent storm. It did not come from the darkness of the ancient wilderness. Sometimes, the greatest danger came from within the tribe itself. A prehistoric tribe depended on unity. They hunted together. They searched for food together. They protected their children together. And when a dangerous predator appeared, they stood side by side. Alone, one person was weak. But together, they had a chance to survive. For many seasons, one small tribe had lived peacefully beside a large rocky cave. A river flowed nearby, providing fresh water. Tall trees offered fruits and shelter, while the open grasslands gave the hunters a chance to find animals. The tribe was like one large family. Every person had a role. The strongest members traveled far into the wilderness to hunt. Others searched for fruits, roots, and edible plants. Mothers cared for their children while also helping gather food. Older members watched the young and shared the knowledge they had learned from surviving countless dangers. At night, they gathered around a fire. The flames gave them warmth. The light kept some predators away. And for a few peaceful hours, the tribe could forget about the dangers waiting beyond the darkness. But peace is fragile, and one day, their world began to change. The rains became weaker. Days passed without water falling from the sky. The green grass slowly turned yellow and dry. Small streams disappeared. Animals be. The morning after the argument, the tribe woke to a world that no longer felt the same. The sun rose slowly over the dry African landscape, but no one gathered together as they once had. There was no warmth, no laughter, no feeling of unity. Instead, the tribe remained divided. On one side were the hunters and those who believed that the strongest members deserved more food. On the other side were those who believed that everything should be shared equally. The same people who had once slept beside one another now watched each other with suspicious eyes. And hunger continued to grow. As the morning became hotter, a group of women and younger tribe members left the cave to search for roots and fruits. They traveled farther than usual. The land was dry. Many trees no longer carried enough fruit. The ground had become hard, making roots difficult to find. After hours of searching, they discovered only a small amount of food. It was not enough. When they returned to the cave, everyone immediately looked at what they had brought. But before the food could be shared, another argument began. The strongest hunter stepped forward. He demanded that his group receive more. The other leader refused. Angry sounds filled the camp. Hands pointed. Faces tightened. The fire between them seemed to burn brighter as the two groups moved farther apart. Then suddenly, one of the older members made a discovery. Some of the tribe's stored food was missing. Everyone became silent. The small amount of food they had saved for the coming days had disappeared. Immediately, suspicion spread through the tribe. Who had taken it? Who had stolen from their own people? The hunters blamed the other group. The other group blamed the hunters. People began searching around the cave. They looked behind rocks. Inside, small hiding places. Among the dry leaves and animal skins. Then they found something. A young prehistoric man was hiding food behind a large stone. The predator lunged through the tall grass with incredible speed. The young hunter was trapped beneath it, struggling desperately to escape. For a moment, the other prehistoric humans stood frozen. Only seconds earlier, they had been fighting over food and territory. Now, they faced something far more dangerous. The strongest hunter tightened his grip on his primitive spear. He knew that attacking the predator could cost him his life. But he also knew something else. If he abandoned the young hunter, the tribe would lose another member. With a powerful cry, he charged forward. The predator turned. The hunter struck the ground beside it with his spear, trying to frighten it away. Another man joined him, then another. Slowly, the entire hunting group began moving together. Their fear remained, but their unity returned. They shouted. They raised their spears. They made themselves appear larger. Finally, the predator backed away and disappeared into the tall grass. The young hunter was alive, but badly injured. Two members of the group lifted him carefully and carried him back toward the cave. For the first time in many days, the rival group saw the hunters returning together. They expected more arguments. Instead, they saw an injured member of their tribe. A mother rushed forward when she recognized him. She cried out and ran toward the group. The young hunter was placed beside the fire. Everyone gathered around him. Even those who had been fighting against the hunters came closer. The conflict suddenly seemed smaller. They had spent days arguing over a small amount of food, but now they understood something much more important. Food could be found again. Territory could be changed, but a human life could not simply be replaced. The older members began treating the young hunter's wounds. Leaves were placed over the injuries. Water was carefully shared. Even though supplies were limited, no one complained. For one night, the night was completely dark. Only the flames of the small fire illuminated the faces of the prehistoric humans. Beyond the circle of light, the wilderness was silent. Too silent. The tribe knew that something was watching them. Several pairs of glowing eyes appeared between the rocks. The predators had followed the smell of water, food, and humans. The children moved closer to their mothers. The elderly members gathered behind the strongest adults. The hunters formed a circle around the group. And for the first time since the internal conflict began, every member of the tribe stood together. No one asked who deserved more food. No one remembered who had started the argument. There was only one goal: protect the tribe. One of the predators slowly stepped into the firelight. The hunters raised their spears. The animal stopped. It stared at them. The prehistoric humans shouted together, making themselves appear larger and more dangerous. The predator moved closer. One hunter stepped forward. Another stood beside him. Then the entire group moved forward as one. The firelight reflected from their faces. They were afraid, but they were not alone. Suddenly, the predator charged. The tribe reacted immediately. Spears were raised. Stones were thrown. People shouted. The predator jumped toward the group, but quickly turned away. Another predator tried to approach from the opposite side. The humans moved together again. Their unity created a wall of resistance. After several tense moments, the predators finally backed away. They disappeared into the darkness. The tribe remained silent. No one moved for several seconds. Then the children began to calm down. The mothers held them tightly. The hunters lowered their weapons. Everyone was exhausted, but they were alive. The two former rivals looked at each other. They had once been willing to fight each other over food. Now they had stood together against death. The experience had siege. Several days had passed since the tribe escaped the danger near the water source. Life had become calmer, but the memory of their internal conflict remained. Every member of the tribe had learned something from those difficult days. They had discovered that hunger could turn friends into enemies. Fear could destroy trust, and anger could divide a family. But they had also discovered something much more powerful. Cooperation could bring people back together. One morning, the tribe prepared for another hunt. The strongest hunters gathered their primitive spears. The younger members followed closely behind. Even the injured hunter, who was still recovering, wanted to help. The tribe moved through the grasslands as one group. This time, there was no competition between them. No one wanted to prove that their side was stronger. They simply wanted to bring food home. After several hours, they found the tracks of a large animal. The hunters carefully followed the trail. They moved slowly through the tall grass. Everyone remained alert. Then they saw the animal. The hunt began. The hunters moved from different directions, working together. One blocked the animal's escape. Another waited near the rocks. The strongest hunter gave a signal. The others moved forward. After a long struggle, they succeeded. The tribe finally had enough food. But instead of celebrating one individual's strength, they celebrated the group. The meat was carried back together. Children waited near the cave. Mothers prepared the fire. The elderly watched as the hunters returned. And when the food arrived, it was shared. Everyone received something. For the tribe, it was more than a successful hunt. It was proof that their unity had returned. That evening, the fire burned brightly. The tribe sat together. The two former rival leaders sat near each other. There was still some sadness in their eyes. They remembered the days when they had fought. They remembered. The story of the ancient tribe did not end when the conflict was over. In reality, survival never truly became easy. The drought continued. Predators still moved through the wilderness. Food was still difficult to find, and every new day brought another challenge. But something inside the tribe had changed. They had learned from their mistakes. The people now understood that a single decision could affect everyone. One selfish action could create fear. One angry argument could divide families. And one act of courage could bring everyone together. The tribe began creating simple rules. When food was found, it would be shared. When someone was injured, they would be protected. When danger appeared, everyone would stand together. These are not written laws. There were no books, no buildings, no formal leaders with crowns or titles. The rules existed only in the minds of the people, and everyone understood them. One afternoon, a group of young hunters returned from the grasslands. They had found a small animal. It was not enough to feed the entire tribe. The young hunters looked at one another. They remembered what had happened before. They could have hidden the food. They could have kept it for themselves. Instead, they carried it back to the cave. The older members watched them carefully. Then one of the young hunters placed the food near the fire. The tribe remained silent. An elderly member smiled. The food was divided. Everyone received a small portion. It was not a large meal, but it was enough to remind them that they had changed. The next morning, something unexpected happened. The tribe discovered footprints near the water. They were not human. They were large, very large. The hunters immediately became alert. They followed the tracks carefully. The footprints led toward the forest. The tribe realized that a large predator had entered their territory. The old fear returned. The children were moved toward the scent. The ancient tribe had survived hunger, drought, predators, and one of the most dangerous threats of all, their own internal conflict. But the world around them was changing again. The small water source that had saved their lives was beginning to shrink. The dry season had returned. The grasslands were turning brown. Animals were becoming harder to find. And once again, the tribe faced a difficult decision. Should they remain where they were? Or should they leave their home and search for a safer place? This time, the decision would be different. There was no shouting, no fighting. No one demanded control. The tribe gathered together. The elders observed the land. The hunters studied the animal tracks. The mothers considered the safety of the children. Everyone had something to contribute. After a long discussion, they decided to move. The journey would be dangerous, but staying could be even worse. At sunrise, the tribe began walking. They carried what little they could. Primitive tools, food, branches, animal hides, and most importantly, their children. The strongest members walked at the front and back of the group. The vulnerable stayed in the middle. Everyone watched the surrounding wilderness. For hours, they traveled across the ancient landscape. The sun became hotter. Dust covered their feet. The youngest children became tired. One small child began to fall behind. His mother tried to carry him, but she was exhausted. Without hesitation, one of the hunters lifted the child onto his shoulders. The mother looked at him with gratitude. No words were necessary. The tribe continued. Later that afternoon, they reached a narrow valley. Fresh tracks covered the ground. The hunters immediately recognized them. Large animals had recently passed through. That meant food, but also meant danger. Predators often followed herds. The tribe moved carefully. Suddenly, a loud sound came from behind them. Everyone turned. Hey! The new valley seemed peaceful. Fresh water flowed between the rocks. Trees provided shade. Animals moved through the surrounding grasslands. For the ancient tribe, it looked like the perfect place to begin again. But peace in the prehistoric world never lasted forever. The tribe had learned how dangerous internal conflict could be. So this time, they tried to build stronger bonds between every member. The elders taught the younger people that food belonged to the whole group. The hunters learned to communicate before making decisions. The mothers taught children to help one another. And the strongest members understood that strength was not only about physical power. It was also about protecting those who were weaker. For many days, everything went well. Then the hunters discovered something unusual. A large herd of animals had entered the valley. There was enough food for the tribe to survive for many days. Excitement spread through the camp. But the hunters immediately realized that hunting the herd would be dangerous. One mistake could cause an animal to attack. The group needed a plan. This time, they did not argue. They gathered around the fire. The experienced hunters explained what they had seen. The younger hunters listened. The elders watched carefully. Together, they created a simple strategy. Some hunters would guide the animals toward a narrow passage. Others would wait near the rocks. The rest would remain close to the children and elderly members. The plan worked. The tribe returned with enough food to survive. Everyone celebrated. The success strengthened their trust. But later that night, an unexpected problem appeared. One of the young hunters became jealous. He believed that the strongest hunter was receiving too much respect. He wanted to become the new leader. At first, he said nothing. But inside his mind, anger began growing. He watched the older leader. He watched how the others followed his instruction. The ancient tribe had learned to survive conflict. They had learned to share food. They had learned to listen. They had learned that leadership was not about controlling others, but protecting them. Yet the prehistoric world continued to test them. One morning, dark clouds appeared over the distant mountains. The air became unusually cold. The birds disappeared from the trees. The animals began moving toward shelter. The elders looked toward the sky. They knew a powerful storm was coming. The tribe quickly began preparing. Food was moved deeper inside the cave. Children were brought closer to the safest area. The hunters gathered branches and stones to strengthen the entrance. Everyone had a task, but then something unexpected happened. A young mother discovered that her child was missing. She searched around the camp. Nothing. She called his name. No answer. Panic spread through her face. Other members immediately joined the search. The tribe moved through the surrounding area. The wind was becoming stronger. Leaves were flying through the air. Thunder echoed across the mountains. Then they heard a faint cry. The child was trapped near a rocky slope. A sudden landslide had blocked his path. The mother tried to reach him, but the ground was unstable. The strongest hunters stepped forward. One of them tied a long vine around his body. Another hunter held the other end. Slowly, they moved toward the child. Lightning flashed across the sky. Rain began falling. The hunter reached the child. He grabbed him tightly. Then the ground shifted. For a moment, both of them nearly fell. The tribe pulled the vine with all their strength. Slowly, they brought them back. The mother grabbed her child and held him tightly. Everyone watched in silence. The storm became stronger. The tribe rushed into the cave. Thunder shook the ground. Rain poured over the valley. Wind tore branches from trees. The tribe stayed close together. The essay. The next morning, the ancient valley looked completely different. The storm had washed the dust from the rocks. Small streams flowed between the trees. Fresh leaves covered the ground. And for the first time in many days, the air felt cool and clean. The tribe slowly stepped out of the cave. Everyone was tired, but everyone was alive. The storm had destroyed part of their shelter, scattered their food, and broken several of their tools. Yet no one complained. They had learned that survival was not about having a perfect life. It was about rebuilding after everything went wrong. The tribe immediately began repairing the damaged shelter. Some gathered branches. Others collected stones. The hunters searched for food. The mothers stayed close to the children. Even the youngest members helped by carrying small pieces of wood. The work continued throughout the morning. Then, near the edge of the valley, one of the hunters discovered something unusual. Fresh footprints. Many of them. A large group of animals had passed through the valley during the night. The tribe followed the tracks carefully. They eventually discovered a large herd moving across the grasslands. This was an opportunity, but the hunters knew they had to be careful. The herd was much larger than anything they had hunted before. One mistake could turn a successful hunt into a disaster. The The hunters gathered around their leader. The young hunter who had once wanted to replace him was now standing among them. The older leader looked at him. Then he gave him an important responsibility. He would lead one side of the hunt. The young man was surprised. He had expected distrust. Instead, he was being given a chance to prove that he could be responsible. He accepted. The hunters divided into groups. They moved silently through the grass. The wind carried their scent away from the animals. The plan was simple. One group would guide the herd toward a narrow passage. The second, the ancient tribe had survived something more dangerous than a storm, more complicated than a hunt, and more painful than hunger. They had survived a conflict between their own people. But the greatest lesson was not that conflict had disappeared. It was that the tribe had learned how to face conflict before it destroyed them. Years passed. The children who once hid behind their mothers during arguments grew older. They became hunters, gatherers, protectors, and parents themselves. The young hunter who had once dreamed of power became one of the most trusted members of the group. He remembered his mistake. He remembered the moment when ambition had almost divided the tribe again. And because he remembered, he became a better leader. Whenever two members argued, he listened to both sides. Whenever food became scarce, he reminded everyone of the old days. Whenever fear returned, he reminded them that fear could make people forget who their real enemies were. The tribe continued moving across the ancient landscape. They followed water. They followed animals. They searched for places where their children could survive. Sometimes they found abundance. Sometimes they found almost nothing. But they continued together. One evening, after a long journey, the tribe reached a wide, open plain. The sunset covered the horizon in golden light. The hunters looked across the grass. They saw herds in the distance. The elders saw a place where the tribe could rest. The mothers saw a safe place for their children. Everyone saw hope. They stopped there for the night. The fire was built. Food was prepared. The children gathered around the flames. Then, one of the elders began telling the story of the tribe's past. He told them about the great drought. He told them about the missing food. He told them about the two rival groups. He told them about the fight. He told them about the predator that forced the divided tribe to stand together again. The chill. Many seasons had passed since the ancient tribe first faced its great internal conflict. The people who had once fought over food were now older. The children who had watched those arguments had become adults, and the lessons of the past had become part of the tribe's identity. But the ancient world was changing once again. The climate became colder. The plants around the valley began disappearing. Animals migrated toward warmer regions. The tribe realized that their home could no longer provide enough food. Once again, they had to move. But this time, they were not afraid of the decision. They gathered together. The elders studied the land. The hunters examined animal tracks. The gatherers searched for plants. The families prepared their belongings. Everyone knew what needed to be done. At sunrise, the tribe began its journey. They crossed dry plains. They climbed rocky hills. They passed through dense forests. Every step was difficult, but they stayed together. When someone became tired, another person helped. When a child cried, someone carried them. When an elderly member struggled, the strongest hunters slowed down. No one was left behind. This was very different from the tribe they had once been. The old conflict had changed them. It had taught them that every member mattered. After several days, they reached a massive valley surrounded by tall mountains. A river flowed through the center. There were trees. There was food. There were signs of animals. The tribe stopped. The elders looked at the land. This could become their new home. The tribe settled near the river. For a while, life became peaceful again. Children played near the water. Hunters practiced with their spears. Families gathered fruits and roots. At night, everyone sat around the fire. But one evening, the tribe noticed something unusual. Another group of prehistoric humans had appeared on the opposite side of the river. They were watching. The sun rose over the ancient valley, illuminating the river and the surrounding mountains. For many seasons, the two human groups had lived together. They had shared water. They had shared knowledge. They had learned to hunt together. Their children had grown up side by side. What had once looked like a dangerous meeting between strangers had become a new beginning. But the prehistoric world never offered permanent peace. One morning, the hunters noticed that the animals had disappeared from the valley. The herds had moved toward the mountains. The river was still flowing, but food was becoming scarce. The two groups faced a difficult decision. If they stayed, they might eventually starve. If they moved, they would have to cross dangerous territory. The leaders gathered near the river. Everyone listened. The older leader explained that they needed to follow the animals. The younger hunters wanted to leave immediately, but the elders warned that the mountains were dangerous. There were steep cliffs, dense forests, and predators that rarely came near the valley. The tribe needed to plan carefully. For the first time, both groups began preparing together. They gathered food. They collected water. They prepared primitive tools. They selected the strongest members to protect the children. Then, at sunrise, they began the journey. The path toward the mountains was difficult. The ground became rocky. The air became colder. Trees grew thicker. The sunlight barely reached the forest floor. The hunters moved slowly. They searched for tracks. They listened for animals. Every sound could mean danger. Then one of the children noticed something moving between the trees. Everyone stopped. A large predator was watching them. The hunters immediately formed a defensive line. The animal did not attack. It simply watched. The humans remained still. After a few moments, the predator turned and disappeared into the forest. The tribe continued. The new valley became the tribe's home. For the first time in many seasons, there was enough water. The river flowed steadily through the green landscape. Trees provided fruit. Animals traveled through the surrounding grasslands. The tribe had found what they had been searching for. But the elders knew one important truth. A peaceful place does not guarantee a peaceful future. The tribe had already learned that conflict could begin at any moment. Sometimes because of hunger, sometimes because of fear, sometimes because of jealousy, and sometimes because people simply misunderstood one another. So the leaders began teaching the younger generation something different. They taught them to speak before fighting. They taught them to listen before judging. And they taught them that strength should be used to protect others, not control them. The children grew up hearing stories about the old conflict. They learned about the drought, the missing food, the rival groups, the dangerous predator, and the moment when the tribe finally understood that they needed each other. These stories became part of their identity. Years passed. The children became young adults. The young adults became hunters and parents. And the older generation slowly became weaker. One day, the tribe's oldest leader could no longer walk long distances. He had spent his entire life protecting the group. He had survived droughts, storms, predators, hunger, and internal conflict. Now his body was becoming weak. The younger hunter who had once wanted to replace him came to sit beside him. The old leader looked at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the young man asked what would happen to the tribe when the old leader was gone. The elder looked toward the river. He knew the answer. The tribe did not need one person. It needed everyone. He told the young hunter that leadership should never belong to one person forever. A strong tribe needed many people with diff. Many generations had passed since the first great conflict. The original leaders were gone. The children who had witnessed the old struggles had become elders themselves. And the lessons of the past had become deeply rooted in the tribe. The people now understood that survival was not simply about finding food or escaping predators. It was about building relationships strong enough to survive difficult times. The tribe had grown larger. Families had expanded. New children were born every season. The valley became a place filled with activity. Hunters traveled across the grasslands. Gatherers searched through forests. Children played beside the river. Elders taught stories around the fire. For a long time, life was peaceful. But then another major challenge appeared. The river began to change. The water level slowly dropped. At first, no one was worried. But the dry season continued. The river became narrower. Small pools disappeared. Animals began moving away. The elders immediately recognized the warning signs. Another drought was coming. Fear spread through the community. The people remembered the old conflict. They knew that hunger could make even peaceful people desperate. The The leaders gathered everyone together. They explained that food would need to be carefully managed. Every family would receive a share. The hunters would travel farther. The gatherers would search deeper into the forest. The elderly and children would be protected. At first, everyone agreed. But as the drought became worse, tension began returning. One family secretly began keeping extra food. Another family discovered it. Anger spread. People began accusing one another. The younger members became frustrated. Some demanded more food for the strongest hunters. Others argued that children and elders should receive priority. The tribe stood at the edge of another internal conflict. But this time, something was different. The elders remembered the past.